Okay, today we'll be looking at, we've done Flexbox, did Flexbox last week, and we saw the power of Flexbox. So we'll be doing CSS grids today. I want to look at CSS grids and see how we can use CSS grids. And also after then, we'll also be looking at Bootstrap. Hopefully we'll introduce Bootstrap today. And so when we're done with that, I guess in 2 weeks, thereabouts, we should be done with CSS. Then we'll have to, because the way we'll go about it is everything we've learned in CSS and HTML. In one of the classes, we're going to be building something. But probably we'll just stay online together for just like the duration of our class and build something with CSS. Probably a web page, something that we can always can be proud of. All right, so let me jump onto CSS grids and what they do. Basically, the idea of CSS grids are like, they basically function like JavaScript, like Flexbox. Let me open my Flex. They basically function like Flexbox. You know how we did Flexbox and we had several functionality. We had Flex container and stuff. CSS grid follows the same concept of Flexbox. The major difference between the both of them is CSS grids allow you to lay out your web page in 2 dimensions, while Flexbox allows for 1-dimensional layouts. Let me explain what that means. My address code, why it comes up, okay? Okay, for example, just like we have the Flex container, you know, when we say we have the container elements that carries everything. Okay, it's the same concept we use for the CSS grid, I want to open that challenge I dropped. Let me open it, and so we can also use it as, I'm citing this as an example while we learn. Just give me a second. Let me. I've done it. I'm trying to open that work. The last time so that it starts from there. Okay, this is my screen. And this is basically what we had from the last work we did on Flexbox. No, with Flexbox, what we did was, as you remember, these are my sections. And here we styled this using Flexbox. Remember, we had a Flex container, and from the Flex container, I started styling. You know, I mentioned something that whenever you see a challenge, especially when it comes to using Flexbox and you're asked to use Flexbox to solve the problem, the first thing you should do, okay, what is my container and which are the children elements? If you're able if you're able to determine the container, it makes the work very easy. Like what I have here on my screen. This is the challenge we had to work with in this week. Now, this is a whole let's say this is a typical website. Now, if I may ask, what this box covering everything, if I want to use Flex on this, the Flex container, let me say I call this whole page, I call it my main section. Basically, I call it a section and I give you the ID main. So that main, that's the one called ID main is now my flex container for the whole of the page. Like in this case, I have my ID section. So this my section, this whole section is the main container holding everything inside. Is the main container holding everything in that particular section I want to style. While if I come here, this nav element becomes my main container for this other portion of my my HTML documents. So you can see if I want to style this content, this one is my main, and this nav element has two children, the image and the unordered list. It has two children, image and unordered list. So which means if I want to use Flexbox to style this component, I'm going to put my display flex on my main, then the children will now follow suit. I can now play around with children. This same concept is the same concept CSS Grid uses. Now, but in CSS Grid, instead of defining container, so let me just comment out everything we did here last week. Let me just comment out everything we did here last week. So let me comment this out. Let me just remove. Okay. Let me remove what we did last week. We did display flex. Okay, remove this guy. So I'm just removing all the Flexbox properties we applied to it. So also the display flex here. So let me remove it. Let's comment this out. The same one here, I'm commenting it out. Okay, so this is what I now have. I go live. I don't have any flex applied to anything here. This is just the element the way it is. Can delete these ones. So you see it properly. Remove this. So this was the same work the same as example we used last week. But as you can see, I've removed everything. I've removed the flex box. You can see those my P elements before they were in boxes now, but I've removed them. Now I want to use CSS Grid to style this my elements. So what I will do is, just as I have it's the same concept. I have my parent element holding everything. Then I have the children elements. In the parent element in CSS Grid, we call it the grid container. We call the parent element the grid container. And if we want to style it, we put a class of grid container. The class name should be equal to grid container. So I put grid container. Please note, you mustn't specify it as grid container. Sorry, I don't. The name mustn't be grid container. Okay, let's maintain the ID we specified. We have our home ID. So our home ID now becomes the parent container. But this container in CSS Grid, just as you call it the flex container, in CSS Grid, we'll call that ID, we'll call that container the grid container. So all I need to do is I go to my style and I locate the grid container. In my case, the grid container is this home. The one the one I use ID home for. Let me go back so you see it. This is my ID home. So everything inside here, so if I should ask, how many children does this home ID have? How many children does he have? Someone should answer me, please. Just look at my work and tell me how many children it has. How many direct children it has? Okay, just to save our time, because our time is fast. It's running out fast. So if you look at this ID section, this home section, this home ID, it has two children. The first child is this H1 element, while the second one is this div element. Because somebody might be thinking that this P element are also direct children of node. The P element are not the direct children of this ID section. The P element are rather the children of this div class. and this div class is a child. So the P element, you can call them grandchildren of this ID section. So the two major elements. So the elements that this my styling will be applicable to now are these two, this one and this one. So if I go to that my CSS and I put, if I want to use grid, CSS grid to style my element, all I need to do is to come here and I'll specify display, just as we used to do for Flexbox. But this time around, I will call the display grid. Once I say display grid, it already knows that what I'm trying to do, I'm trying to use CSS grid system to style it. I'm trying to use CSS grid system to style it. Nothing happens for now. Nothing happens here. So let's go ahead and implement our stylings. Let's go ahead and start implementing our styles. Okay, this here. Okay, so the display is CSS grid. Now, one good thing about using CSS grid is this. I can specify, I will be drawing an analogy from Flexbox because they have similar concepts. Now, after specifying my CSS grid, I can now go ahead and specify my the column, the width and the length of the children inside the CSS grid. Remember that it has two children for now. This is one child, and the whole of this forms one child. So the whole of this forms one child. So this CSS grid is applicable to here. Okay. Instead of doing that, let me just go ahead and style this P because I think we'll see the example better displayed when it comes to P. But just note that this, my ID, has two children for now, the H1 and this div class. Now this div class now has several paragraphs, which is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, as the case may be. So I want to now use Flexbox to style them. If I want to now style them, what becomes my parent elements in relation to this P element is now this class, this div class, home paragraph. So if I want to style it, I need to come to that parent element called home paragraph, which is somewhere here, home paragraph, and give it a display of grid. And give it a display of grid. Display grid. Sorry, display grid. So I've given it a display of grid. Let me go ahead and remove everything that has to do with Flexbox here. It now has a display of grid. All right. Now, I want to now specify how many columns I want it to be. As you can see, they're sitting on top of each other, and there are no spaces in between. There are no spaces in between. Now, to specify how many columns, the size of your columns, and the length of your columns, we use something called grid templates. Grid templates. Let me go ahead and specify a property called grid templates. Now, I have grid. Please just follow me. This grid system is a little bit tricky, but if you follow along, you understand it. Grid template column. Now, what this grid template column does is I'm trying to tell instruct any web page. I'm trying to tell any web page the number of columns I want it to divide my elements into. If I specify two columns, let's say I specify 50 pixel and 50 pixel, 50 pixel, and I go ahead and do 50 pixel again. What I'm saying is that divide my work into two columns. Divide what I've done into two columns and get 50 is too small. Let me do 500. 500 pixel and 500 pixel. Sorry. Yeah, it's always okay. This guy is always very tricky, so that's why I say she just follow me. So what it has done, I will understand. I will explain what this fraction means that I just did here. What it has done now is this grid template columns is saying divide this thing into just two columns. So what it did basically is it's created a space, as you can see, in between these two columns. So my pages will be laid out in two columns. My pages will be laid out in two columns. For better understanding, let me put a margin down on the paragraphs. Let me put a margin down on each of the paragraphs. so that let me put a margin. My P elements, let me just put a margin down between them so that you better understand it. I will see the spaces between them. Oh, done. So I'm targeting P. I just want to put a margin in between P. Even before specifying this, let me just remove this. Put a margin. Okay. So if each of my P element now has spaces in between the both of them. So I just want to do that so that you see. Okay. So should I make it okay? It's fine. Margin top. Now, if I now go ahead and specify my my grid pattern. So what it has done is just see what it has done. It has now created a space in between them. It has created a space in between them. So it's saying that each of my paragraph divide them into two different columns. So I now have two different columns. But if I increase that figure to 4, it will arrange them in 4 columns. Let me make it another one here. Let's start with 3. 3 has arranged it in 3 columns. Remember that I have just 5 paragraphs. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So after filling the 3 columns, it will move it to the next one. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So those my P element, my paragraphs are now arranged into columns. Let me just specify a border so that we'll specify a border around my paragraphs. All right, let's go ahead. Okay, so I was attempting to answer questions from Suka. So Suka, I don't know because if you notice what I did here, I reduced the size, and so just check your sizes and ensure they are what you want so that you get the result you want. And if you still have any challenge, you can drop the code snippet on the Slack channel. We'll look at it together, and so that we can. And that is one thing I also like us to learn. The ability to look for solutions easily is what actually makes you a very good developer. You have to learn to search, and if you don't get an answer, ask questions immediately. We don't consider it. We don't consider it to be somebody who doesn't know. That's why you don't ask. Even the best of developers ask a lot of questions. But once you try something, try getting, because what we do is time based. If you let's say you are building a website for a firm or something, they're not going to give you a whole month. There's a time tied to that job. So the idea is the earlier you do and submit, the better. The more the better for you. So if you try to solve it yourself, you take your time, try to solve, and you can't find out anything. Once you check Stack Overflow, you go to Mozilla MDN as I specified, W3 Schools, and you can't find, just drop the code snippet and ask questions. We'll figure it out together. Okay, so that'll be that. Suka, have I answered your question?
Yes, thank you.
So you can drop the code snippet and we'll look at it together. But basically, it's supposed to just work, just like as you can see, mine is working, right?
Yeah.
All right. So let's go ahead and I will introduce a bootstrap today, and I will see if we can how far we'll go with it. Now, what is bootstrap? This is websites for bootstrap. Please note this website, and after now, I want you to play around with it. Look at bootstrap. Look at what it does. I'm dropping it on the charts for those who might forget, so you can open it up or copy and keep somewhere. Bootstrap. Now, what is bootstrap? You know, there is something called frameworks in web development. You know, these are CSS grid flexbox that we're building. It's like on our own, we're trying to build layouts for containers on our own. But what if somebody had already built this layer and dropped somewhere? All the person needs for you to do is to plug into this layer and work with it. That is where Bootstrap comes in. Bootstrap is a CSS framework. Bootstrap is a CSS framework. Framework means it's a template. Framework is more like a template that you can use and plug these templates to your work and you get your job done. What you're saying is that these templates get a plugin that you can plug to this template. After building your HTML, plug in these templates and Bootstrap styles it for you without stress. So that is what the template does. So Bootstrap is a CSS framework. A framework does. And one thing you should learn how to do whenever you navigate to a page, look for the documentation. It can be written documentation or written docs. Documentation is the friend of the developer. So you go to the documentation, click on it, and you start reading about Bootstrap and what it does. But what I'm be doing today is to introduce it to you and tell you how you can plug it into your site and use it to work and master it. But I have one, let me call it a caveat. Bootstrap is also limited. For instance, in Bootstrap, there are specific colors that are defined for you to use in styling. They've not incorporated all the colors you might think about. They have, I think, 8 primary colors they use. Now, what if you're building a site that maybe the end user or a client wants you to build a site that contains a color that is not part of the Bootstrap color? That is why you need to learn CSS. Why I brought it up was I know some persons who say, if I can use Bootstrap, why were we learning CSS? Yes, there are limitations to Bootstrap too, but it also comes in handy. Sometimes, let's say you want to build a site that you're not restricted to using any particular color or anything. You can plug in Bootstrap and use it as a CSS framework. Now, how does it work? The first thing you should do is you connect it to your page. This is documentation. You should create a new HTML file. After creating a HTML file, now I want to include the Bootstrap. One of the ways of including Bootstrap is by using the CDM, the Bootstrap CDM. The Bootstrap CDM. So what it simply means is use a link that will link your website to the Bootstrap. Use a link that will be linking your website to the Bootstrap. All these things here, you can see everything here is what we've been doing with HTML. This is our doc. This is this. Let me just place it side by side with our work. This is the doc. This is the meta assets and the rest of it. So what I will just be doing is I'll just collect the CDN. This is the link. This is my Bootstrap link. Initially, I was working with this link, this link that linked my CSS, external CSS file that I had that was seen to stem. But if I comment it out now, it no longer works again. My page will now be looking at me. What I will now have is just my typical HTML without any styling. As you can see, everything has disappeared. My image is now very large, sitting everywhere, disturbing. So this is what I have. This is what my page looks like by default. Exactly. Now, sorry, let me just, now, where is that background image? I'm looking for this image. Trying to look for where.
Is your
Okay,
icon?
yeah, that's my image. Yeah, thank you. Okay, so this is what I have. This is my page without an image, nothing and stuff. So if I want to use Bootstrap to style this page, the first thing I will do after including that, I'll now come here. Depending on what I want to style, there are different components. After including my CDN, this is my included the CDN link. Now, depending on the component I want to style, let's say I want to style my buttons. Now, I want you to take a look at this part that says layouts. We have layouts, we have grid, we have columns, and the rest of them. We'll go through them. We'll go through as many of them as we can. But I want us to start with the component parts first. I want us to start with these component parts. Now, card. Let's start with card. Now, what does card do? This is what you do. This is how you use Bootstrap. What does card do? You read about it. What does card do? This is what we want. Remember that this is what we're working with. We're putting our P element inside a card. So with Bootstrap, all I need to do, this is a card. This is a card, and this card has an image. This card has an image. This card has this image. It has the H5 elements, and it has the P. But the card we're working with does not have all this. All our card had is just the P. So what I need to do is to come here and grab this class, just like this. You grab the class because it works by classes. So this class you see here is already registered in the Bootstrap, would I call it the Bootstrap server. So if I now come here and specify that my components, come here and specify this my P elements, this my P element, let's say the one called first. I come here and specify it to be, sorry, I come here, I specify it here. So I can go ahead and remove this class I specified before. I now have a new class I want to specify here. I call this class, paste it here. What happens to my page? This is my first paragraph. Takes this shape without implementing any style in it. Let's see what comes up here. Did you see what happened here? I didn't implement any styling. I'm not using my CSS styling now. I'm just using Bootstrap. This is how Bootstrap works. I'm not using any of this styling written here. To prove that I'm not using it, remember I commented it out. I've removed the link, so nothing is linking the two of them together. So immediately I specified this styling here. So which means if I'm using Bootstrap, I might need to remove all the classes I specified. Bootstrap, this class called card, something called card is already registered in the Bootstrap's server. That anytime it sees any class called card here. So even if I go ahead and if I call any class card, the same thing will apply to that particular P element. Let's say I call it card. The same thing applies. See, it has given it a border. The only thing is that it hasn't given it a width. I haven't specified a style, a width, which is 18 rem, but it has given it a border. So what that means is that, okay, if I even remove, let me remove the rem that it came with. Let me just stick with. Please follow me with this Bootstrap. So once I call it card, what it just does is that in the Bootstrap domain, it's saying that any class called card, give it a border. Any class called card, give it a border. Then if I now go ahead and specify the width, just as maybe I just want to get exactly what they have there, exactly this, I will have that same thing. So this is what it does. Let me Control C and so I've specified width for this. So I will go ahead and write the same class for all my P. So I want all my P to look like that card. I'll go ahead and specify the same for all my P. All my P. I'm not using my CSS. I just wrote HTML and Bootstrap is styling it for me. Why? Because the reason why this is working is because of the link I dropped up there. And I'm online. So what that link is saying is that anytime I specify a class called card, so let me. Okay, so anytime I specify a card called card, it just arranges it for me like that without writing any CSS code. Can you see what happened here? So this is me. This is Bootstrap working now, not me. So there are different types. We have card and we have button. I want us to look at button and what button does. Now you might be asking, how do we now arrange it the way we are arranging it? That is what this layout section does for you. I want us to look at the component section and look at most of these components and how they work. They will now go ahead and start looking at how to now arrange them. Another interesting one, we might not look at all, but let's look at a few, is button. There are different buttons. These are all the button styles in Bootstrap. See, I remember I told you of the color limitation. These are all the colors you have in Bootstrap. So if I want to create a button that is this color, blue, we call it blue, but Bootstrap calls it primary, secondary, success, danger, warning, info, light, dark. And if I want to create a link, we specify it as this. I want my button to be a link, specify this. So what I need to do is, after creating my button with HTML, let's say I have a button. I don't have a button here, but let me create a button. Let me create a button. Okay, let me even put a button for each of my paragraph. I hope you're following, please. I hope it's not confusing.
No, it's not.
Okay. So let me go ahead and create a button for my paragraph. Okay. I'm creating a button. I call it, after reading that, I said, see more. Okay, so that's the button I created. So without styling, let's see what the button looks like. So this is the button I've created. This is my button. Now I want to now put a bootstrap property to that button. So remember, these are the buttons I have. So all I need to do is to come here and grab this class again. This is the class I want. Grab the whole of this class and add it to my button elements. Once I add it here, automatically the button I'm calling is button primary. So I'm looking for a blue color. So if maybe your designer says you want to design something that has a blue button, you can use this. Button secondary is an ash color. Button success is green. So if we go ahead and see what I just did, let's look at that. Let's see that button. So this is my button. This is me not even doing anything CSS. This is Bootstrap styling it for me. So that is how you style buttons with Bootstrap. That is our button. Let me replicate this, my button, in all the paragraphs. Okay, or it might not be really necessary. Let me just go ahead and do that. Okay, I'm wrapping. Okay, sorry, that was, now we've done this. I want to remove this P here. Since I now have two elements, the P and the button, I will now have to introduce a div element that will serve as a container to hold them. But I don't want to write my button inside my P elements. So let me introduce a div. Let me put a div here. Here, and this is just my div. So this is my div. I want to cut out this part. This is my P elements. Place inside my div. This so I have my P element inside my div, and I now have the button inside. As well, I can come to Bootstrap and just copy the whole button here. Copy this whole button here. Come and paste it inside my div. Then I remove this property from here. Sorry. I remove this class from here. I place it in my div. I'm introducing the div since I have two elements now. So the div cells have the parent element for each of these. I change this to see more. Remember, I'm trying to replicate that card we saw initially. So this is what I have. I have my div elements covering my P, and I have that button see more. So this is not me now doing anything CSS. This is Bootstrap working behind the scene. I'm styling my components for me. So I would like you to go ahead and look at, these things, how they work. As you can see, there's another type of button. After this, after these ones, these are the various variants of the button. Now we also have an option for input elements, button in input, also for outline of the buttons, how you want the outline of the button to look like. So if I now add this property called btn outline primary, I'm saying that my button the background color of my button will be white, but the border should be blue. Now the effect, if I hover to my button, see, if I hover to this button, I want it to change to blue. If I hover, it changes to the main color. So let me copy this again and apply to my element. So this is what Bootstrap does. As simple as that is. Let me paste it here and still go ahead and I want to also use a div to wrap it together. The same div. Same div. I know most of us have heard of Bootstrap. Bootstrap, this is what Bootstrap does. So go ahead and grab this guy, wrap it in here. Okay, so I have a div covering my two elements. I can remove this property from P since it's already in div. Okay. All right, so this is what I have, and I have this button. This is the second button. Let me call this one learn more. So I applied that outline property to the second button. Then let's see how it works using Bootstrap. So this is the second button. So if I hover around it, it changes. Remember that we can still, you know how to implement this effect without Bootstrap, right? Using pseudo selectors. Hope we did that.
Pseudo selectors. So please remind us.
Remember when we had a button that we had to did we not do pseudo selectors? Okay, let me see. Let me disable this Bootstrap and see if we can. The same thing we had there. We can also implement it using, okay, let me say I'm looking for this. This button is called BTM primary. Let me just go ahead and style it here. Let me call it BTM primary. Well, I've disabled the Bootstrap. So this is now our own code. BTN primary. So let's give it a background color of red. Background color of red. This is the background color. Let's see the effect first. This is now our code working. Let's see. And more. And primary. Okay, that's the other button called see more. Okay, that's this property. All right, so I want to introduce before this time runs out. I just want to briefly do that hover effect. Cursor pointer. Okay, so it changes the cursor pointer. Now to introduce the hover effect, we use pseudo selectors. I don't know if I thought we did pseudo selectors. What pseudo selectors basically does is sorry. Yes, so I have a property called hover. Now, what it does is that I'm saying that if I hover around this button, I want something else to happen. This is the original state of the button. This is the original state of the button. And this is now the effect I want if I hover around this button. The background color right now is red. Let's say I want to hover around it. I want the background color to change to white. Into white. Into white. So see what happens. See, it has changed to white. So pseudo selectors help us achieve that. We have hover, we have different different types of pseudo selectors. But I guess we didn't do that. So please, we'll do that in our next class. We'll do a few of them, and it's also transition. But you see that thing Bootstrap does, this is what they programmed behind the scene. But they don't want you to go ahead and start writing all this plenty code. All they want is that just plug into our network and we'll give you these properties. But that effect is what you're seeing here. Is it clear?
Yes, sir. So, Bootstrap, question, please.
All right, go ahead.
So, Bootstrap, we need to be doing inline editing, inline styling, like.
Yeah, but there are still options for you styling it in CSS. Like if you go and call this BTN and specify, maybe you want to specify an additional property, you can call this BTN and specify it. But basic, okay,
in CSS, okay.
Yeah, okay, like this style written here, I can remove this style. This one I can remove. The only thing you're calling the Bootstrap are the classes. You call classes,
Okay.
but this style you can remove it from here. Yeah, that's true. So this card, okay, let's even remove it. They specify the width to be 18 rem. Let's even remove the width as 18 rem. So you can
So
go
you
and
call it card, and you also activate your CSS and Bootstrap together at the top there.
exactly. You activate the both of them together and come here and call it card. Call it card.
Okay.
And now specify the property.
Then you must be online.
You must be online. In fact, that was what I wanted to point out. You must be online to use Bootstrap.
What if you okay, yeah, as for now, we normally submit our assignments via screenshot.
Yeah.
What if you finish coding? How do you retain the information that you extracted from Bootstrap to keep being on your code to be viewed later? Or does it just come in once and stay?
Yeah, it's always be there.
Okay.
Like the code snippet will always be there. But the effect is when the person wants to view the effect, maybe you have a link that you generated and you have a website already that you built that has a link. So the effect might not be seen because they need to be online to be able to see the effect. But the code snippet will be there. Everything will be there. So you can actually, while working, you can take a screenshot and also do the same thing and send it. So you can see that I removed that property, that width. But if I go ahead and activate this guy, I'll have two different styling. I will go ahead and activate this guy. So to avoid that conflict, see, it has shrink the card. But you can see this background was from my own CSS. So you can still work with your own CSS. This background, this border was from my own CSS. You remember?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, so this hover effect still works very well. So that is how you can use Bootstrap, and you can also customize your own CSS while working. But probably what you do, if there are properties that you want to implement that are not captured with Bootstrap, that is when you use CSS. That was why from the onset I told you that Bootstrap is not 100% sufficient. It doesn't give you everything. So you still need to apply some proper, but basic properties like back border and the rest, it gives you those ones. It even gives you the effect of using navigation and hamburger. We'll look at that in the next section. A very nice concept using hamburger. Do that process where, let me see. Do that thing when you can view your navigation component on both your screen and let me see if I have okay, something like this. See. Like this. It has different. We have navbar section. It has. Yeah, the documentation is okay. Something like this. See? You have your nav items listed here. Okay, this. Yeah, this one exactly. This property where you have your nav elements listed on screen. They appear like this. The user has to click to make it open. So Bootstrap gives you this flexibility to do this. We'll look at it. So, but we'll try and see if we can look at some of the components that Bootstrap provides. We might not look at all. So what I will advise you to do when you work, play with these things, go and check. Even for form elements, Bootstrap also gives you some things you can manipulate. So today we've done button, we've done cards. Maybe we'll look at drop down the next time. Look at modal. Modal is very nice. You know what modal means, you know? Okay, let me see if I when you click, maybe you have a main page and you click something to pop up. You want to click for something to pop up and for a user to take an action before you close. The Bootstrap gives you that effect. So this is a modal. This is the main page. It's kind of blinds, it kind of uh, decreases the opacity of the main page and makes the small display, which we normally call modal, the small window, a smaller window come out where users can either read or write and take an action. So look at them.
Look at them.
Now next class. Hello.
Okay, hello.
Okay. So any questions? We have less than 10 minutes to round up this session. Any question? I expect you to ask questions on Bootstrap, because Bootstrap at times can be a little bit tricky and confusing to people. So ask your questions. Let's attempt to answer them. We've done buttons. We've done close buttons, cards. I just want to pick a few that I know we use every day. Yeah, maybe we'll look at this one. So how to use Bootstrap for navigation elements. You know that thing that we're using, when we're using Flexbox to arrange our nav links, you can do that with Bootstrap. This is your UL element. Just add the class nav. It will just align it for you. Let's even implement it now. Okay, let's look at, because I know we have a navigation section here. Let me go ahead and comment out this CSS. We'll see the full effect of. We'll have a nav section, this section. So if we add a class of nav to this section, let's see, class nav. Let's see what Bootstrap gives to us. Okay. Did it change anything? Why it has the UL to the nav? Why the nav items? We call nav items. Okay. The UL element should be nav. Nav. And the class, you give a class to your nav items. You call them nav item. With the class of nav item. Nav item for each of them. It's a class of nav item, and Bootstrap apply styling. Okay, so this is it. It has been arranged. And if we go ahead and continuously styling, I think the nav link, also add nav link to each of the nav links. The nav link, go ahead and add styling here. Click the nav link. Mass of nav link. All you're doing is adding classes and Bootstrap takes over from there. Okay, so let's see what we have here. Okay, so you see your nav neatly arranged without applying a style.
Okay, sir.
Right. So one important thing we'll look is how we can use Bootstrap to set layouts, just as we did for Flexbox. So that let's say I want all these things, of course, I want them to be in boxes, just as we did before. So that's what we also look at. Okay, so that's it for today's class. We've done Bootstrap, at least we've done how to write. So what you're doing basically, just write your HTML, plug it in, go to Bootstrap. Depending on the element you want to style, come here and find what pertains to that. We have we've done nav navigation. We also have nav bar. Nav bar is where you have like what we have, where you have an image on this side and the navigation elements on this side. So you can use Bootstrap to style them. Maybe you have a logo. I think it has an option for logo. It has an option for logo or something like that. Yeah, it has an option for logo under these navs and tabs. There's an option for you placing your logo on the right, and you can always search for something here. This logo. Yeah, logo. No, I saw it when we were scrolling. Now, yeah. Okay, but if you can even work with this, just place a class of nav bar. It's a class of nav bar in your nav elements. So these are nav elements. These are nav elements. And nav elements. Let me comment at our image. Here. The image is rather very large. I'm missing something. Why is it highlighted? Okay, I've not closed quotes. Okay. So I think it has an option for styling images too. It should have something for images, because you remember that our nav element, the image was too big, but even we can also come here and just specify, activate our CSS and style it from there the way we did it before. But let me just write it down with the height here, with the height of say 20 pixel and a width of 20 pixel. Okay, so you can see it has separated our image and our nav section just by adding nav bar as a class to the nav elements. All right, so is Bootstrap fun? Let me get feedback from you. Do you think you prefer it? Yeah,
Yeah,
I know.
I know.
You can use it
to avoid confusion.
yeah, but you have to also, because without a good knowledge of CSS, it might be challenging knowing what works well and what works for what in Bootstrap. But Bootstrap is exciting. I would say it's very exciting, but it doesn't give you all the functionality you want. So those functionality that are missing, you have to now on your own style them using your CSS to style them. So basically, that'll be all for today's class. I hope we've done justice to this. We'll continue with the other components and more into Bootstrap from the next class. Thank you very much. Please check on our Slack channel. Drop your comments, drop your messages and questions. We'll answer them there.
Thank you too. Thank you.
All right. Have a good
So
weekend.
please make the video available anytime earlier.
No worries.
Yeah, you may also drop an assignment or something.
No problem. We'll do that.
Task.
No problem. We'll do that.
Thank you.
All right. All the best.
My boss.
The chief. Alpha.
You do me boss again.